Welcome back to the Real Recovery Show. Today's episode is on food addiction and gastric sleeve surgery. If you think that getting gastric sleeve surgery is easy and a quick fix, it is not. Food addiction is also not just somebody who just binges or somebody who starves themselves. It's much more complicated. And so today's episode is going to touch on all the different things wherever you may feel that you are in maybe just having some lightly unhealthy relationships with food in your body, to maybe thinking that you don't have an issue and recognizing maybe throughout the show that maybe you're also the victim of some cultural programming around food that most of us have been. This topic is a really important topic because while alcohol and drug use is pointed to as the more egregious addictions, food addiction has been rationalized and justified and defended in a myriad of ways, and people have been sick with the consequences and the effects of an unhealthy relationship with food, where they don't necessarily have anybody truly pointing to their relationship with food, like, for example, diabetes, right? Or stomach issues, or ulcers, or hypertension, or even certain forms of cancer. On and on and on. A person can have heart disease and stroke because of poor circulation. The surgeries that a person may need towards the middle of their life, or maybe they're too young, but now they're having to have knee replacement surgery or hip replacement surgery. And it's not to say that automatically, if you're in those situations, for sure, it is 100% because of food addiction. But it's quite interesting how ingrained this thinking is that rationalizes and justifies low to moderate to extreme levels of food addiction, where I've met people, I've been friends with people who maybe were like 300 pounds and were complaining that they had bad knees. And I really feel, and I had to go through a whole transition of my own thinking, because I've been very overweight before from my own body, and I've had spine issues. And I've had spine issues from, I had child abuse, a lot of physical abuse in my childhood, and so I have a spine injury, right? So I had also had a food addiction, and so I had a lot of extra weight on a spine that wasn't exactly ready to support the normal weight. And I'd go to doctors, and they would say that, you just need to work on your spine, and that, you should be able to hold your very large breasts, and you should be able to hold your extra weight that you have. Your spine should be strong enough to do that. And, it was in losing weight that a lot of my health issues straightened out, and duh, so it was like, it's so crazy how much this food positive culture that we have, where we drive down the street and there's every kind of fast food restaurant and people going out and going on dates or hanging out with people or celebrating, how much food is a part of it, and going for family events, how much food is a part of it. We've often talked about how when somebody is an alcoholic, sometimes culturally, whether their ethnicity, or just the family narrative, that alcohol could be a very big part of it. And we joke about the food, but the food is a very big part of it, because generation to generation to generation, we pass down family recipes and ideas of, you're going to insult your aunt if you don't eat her food, or your mom is showing her love this way and she's cooking for you, and we call ourselves foodies, and it's a very overly positive emphasis on food, when at the end of the day, maybe, we're complaining that we've gained weight and we feel jealous of somebody that is thinner than us, or we don't want to wear a bathing suit, or we are insecure about our bodies. Coupled with that idea about food is also some pretty off programming around what our bodies should look like. We have ideas, not just for women, but for men, about what people are supposed to look like. And through a whole movement of body inclusivity, where we are now having the narrative of believing that we should all be, of course, loving towards ourselves about our bodies and loving towards each other about their bodies, the excuse to keep going and keep being heavier stays, because people are now afraid to have the conversation even more now about, being overweight. If a person is drinking and it's affecting their job, it's affecting their health, there are more people that would possibly, depending on this person's personality, be willing to have a, hey, we need to talk to you conversation about what's going on. We're worried about you. But when somebody is really overweight, a lot of times the people that they surround themselves with, right? Just like if you drink or you do drugs, you're going to surround yourself with people that are not going to necessarily, you're going to feel judged by. Foodies tend to be around people who are going to be food positive as well. Mm-hmm. And it's not to say that liking what you're eating and making something that you put pride into and really loving the taste of food is bad in any way, shape, or form. It's that the idea that we have culturally programmed in our minds has such a strong emphasis on using food for celebrating, using food for self-medicating, using food for comfort food, using food to give us unnatural caffeine, etc., unnatural amounts of energy, using food without actually learning the tools and valuing what food is really for. Food really is just for nurturing our nutrition for our body. It's really for fuel. It's really for the amino acids and the amino acids and the minerals and the vitamins and the fiber and everything that our body needs, so that when it goes through its process of healing and regenerating, that it has everything that it needs. And while we're putting in copious amounts of food that's not healthy, our body is now, our immune systems are overactivated, and we're treating our bodies like garbage cans. And I am not speaking from any hilltop of ignorance or arrogance. I grew up in a family where food was king, and I was born Jewish. That wasn't necessarily, I don't know why I had to say that, but in my family, I used to joke that I had a big family with very few people in it, because everybody was overweight. Everybody. And I mean really overweight. Both of my parents were over 350 pounds each. And there was no portion size. There was no real healthy attitude towards food. You could always tell when someone had a feeling, because the light from the fridge would be shining on their body, and there's many times when I myself would find myself in the fridge looking for my solution to something up here in there. And I've had a myriad of health problems. I've had obesity. I've had bulimia. So I've had body dysmorphic disorder. I was a model and a stripper for a period of time. So I had a mother who was an ex-model. So I grew up with a lot of twisted programming. I should eat to make myself feel better. And I should feel guilty if I don't finish my plate, which was always way more than it should have been, because I had no idea about portion size. And at the same time, I should look really good because I don't want to be made fun of, and I want to be wanted, and I want to be empowered as a woman. And that heavy programming of misusing food and misidentifying with my body It weaponizes food against me, and it weaponizes my body against being authentic, against having any true loving relationships with other people and myself. And so all that being said, I have a very strong belief that if you're going to heal any behavior in your life, that you must incorporate healing something in the programming of your mind. And it may mean, and it probably will, and I don't mean probably, it will mean that you're going to have to question beliefs that maybe the people in your life and some of the people that maybe even you admired have told you that you've believed. I myself have had to question, whether or not I need to even eat meat or a turkey for serotonin. I had to question whether or not I could have carbohydrates. Like, we have so many conflicting ideas in our society that each of us needs to have a moment of questioning our relationships with food and ourselves and our bodies, and get honest and find out what really resonates, and do things for the purpose of loving ourselves and health. And so today's topic is on gastric sleeve surgery. And if one goes and uses a tool like this, because that's what it is, if they use this tool without changing their mind, their thinking, their relationship with food, and their habits around food, if they don't do that and they think that just like having liposuction or whatever, that it's going to be this this fix, it's not going to truly fix anything, because a person can lose weight, but they can also, first of all, it's dangerous to continue eating that way when you have less of an ability to pass food through. But at the same time, if you don't change your mind, either you're going to gain the weight back, or you're going to switch to another addiction. Because the mind that has sick programming, it makes it so toxic to be in our own skin that if we keep the same thinking, our relationships are still going to be affected, our self-concept is still going to be intolerable, and we're still going to end up feeling so uncomfortable in our own skin, not doing something to change the way we feel or to make us feel comfortable in social settings, being true to ourselves, that if we don't change our thinking and really understand, we'll shorten our life, we'll shorten the quality of our life, and any of the tools that could have been one of the things to help us really get a leg up, like this surgery, could be just another thing that we suffer through for the purpose of looking better, right? Instead of actually being better. And so I'm a strong advocate on recovery. And recovery is always, sure, it has a lot of components with the body, but it's very important that we always recognize that how we think has to be changed. And not by somebody outside of us. We take what we like and we leave the rest, but incrementally, one baby step at a time. It's amazing how we start to recognize how we're running on programming that's really not healthy, and that's the reason why we're getting these bad results that we don't like in our bodies and our health, etc. So I'll say this last thing, whatever it is that we're running on programming wise, as long as we keep doing this behavior, we are going to get the same results, no matter what. And so if there is a tool like having surgery that can help really help the mind know, okay, I made this commitment. This is going to help me to not do this bad behavior. But at the same time, I'm going to have a very miserable experience if I don't get with the program that I'm signing up for here, and allow it to be a tool to empower me to get my mind off of that. I know that I can't do that right now. I know that I can't. And so how can I keep healing and focus on healing? And so change your mind, change your life. And so one of the tools today is gastric sleeve surgery, and that's what we're talking about. And so joined here with me is Shenelle Copeland, And she is somebody who first got sober off of alcohol and drugs, and then realized that she also wanted to, the surgery was presented to her and she wanted to do that. So we're going to be talking to her about that. We're also joined here with Tay Singer again.
Hi.
Who's had also her own issues with food addiction, etc. And so she's going to talk a little bit about that. But our overall focus today will be on food addiction, about body dysmorphic disorder and body inclusivity and gastric sleeve surgery. And so, so I talked a lot about my my unhealthy programming and the general unhealthy programming. But Shenelle, what was your thinking? What was your experience growing up around food?
Yeah, so my parents are musicians, so I actually grew up on the road when I was younger for some time, and then I lived with my grandparents and started school that way. And it's a traditional Midwest grandparents, in the early 90s, and food was celebratory, we had big meals, it was family time. We, there was never a conversation about what we were doing, if it was healthy or unhealthy, And nobody in my family at that time was particularly unhealthy, Everyone had a great metabolism, except me. And so it wasn't, eventually later in my teens, I was brought up by my grandmother, maybe I could lose some weight. This is before we had these, stores in the mall today where you can kind of get sizes for everybody, I always felt like I was hitting that edge of the XL to XL, do they carry, will it fit, and then, so then it was, let's have grapefruit for morning and make these kinds of changes, which aren't realistic, you're not eating grapefruit every morning.
No.
So yeah, that growing up, there was just no boundaries, there was no lessons to be taught, there was just food is what we do. We eat and have big family meals, and we have people over, and we entertain with food, People come over to our house because my grandma cooks this great meal, all of those sorts of kind of what I feel like are very normal things that every family kind of grows up doing. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, is that when food becomes the focus of getting together, when I had to change the way I ate, I felt so uncomfortable in situations because I felt like I'm not going to be eating what they're eating, right? And how am I going to do this? Right. And, you're uncomfortable and you're doing this and people want you to be comfortable. So what do? They talk to you about it, which makes you more uncomfortable because you're like, please don't notice. Please don't pay attention to my food being different than your food. And then it's and it's embarrassing then, because it's well, am I doing it because I want to be thinner? Are they going to be uncomfortable because now they're eating a thing that maybe they, there's so much stuff in that you can't just enjoy it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No. And today now it's very much like that. People notice I don't eat very much, so it's the kind of live through that. And
did you exercise a lot when you were growing up?
Not really. I was not a sports person. I was in marching band, I mean, playing.
So was I.
Yeah. Yeah, but you did a whole bunch of other physical stuff. You were athletic.
Yeah, no, I was not. It was not my calling cards. My siblings, but not for me,
Yeah. Me neither. I actually had asthma.
Okay.
Yeah, my whole childhood, and I had a big chest towards the end of
it. Same here.
I am how are you supposed to run when you're dying and your chest is hurting you?
I would always get out of that gym class, the one where you had to run the mile. I don't know if you guys had that one, but I had that one. I would always there would always be a bad knee that day. Doctor's note for sure.
Yeah.
Because I was an athlete, that was my PE credits. Sports were my PE credits, so I never had to do that in high school, the PE stuff.
Yeah, but you liked sports.
I actually ran for fun.
Yeah. I would have run for fun if I could have. Yeah. But I couldn't. I didn't know how people did it. I was so shut down, But that's another thing. The way that I ate just conditionally from my childhood was not in a way. I was allergic and sensitive to some of the foods I later found out from my body I shouldn't be eating, but that was my childhood. Do you know what I'm saying? And so between that and my dad smoking 3 packs of cigarettes in the house and I have asthma, it's it was quite fun.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter. The point is they didn't have any idea either, and they were not an athletic family. Was your family athletic?
Well, I don't know if my family was necessarily athletic, but they had us in like all the things. Like I was in gymnastics and judo and
gymnastics.
I started playing piano when I was really young. I picked up woodwinds pretty young, so I was in band.
Yeah, but that's
stuff.
not, yeah.
But I also bowled. And I know it doesn't sound like a super athletic thing.
Oh, bowling is.
But
yeah.
I was a 200.
Those
I was a 200
heavy.
bowler. Like I wasn't a little bowler. You know, like I was pretty good.
So your family was pro athletic.
My family was pro getting me out of the house.
Oh, okay. Well, then it worked out for you.
I feel like they just wanted me busy.
I just realized, though, that my family wasn't. Like,
Yeah.
nobody in my family, did anything athletic.
But I feel like one of my issues was, I mean, and we all know that I have 15 years sober, and one of my biggest issues was I did everything alcoholically, not just alcohol. So, like, if you gave me I remember there was a limit of 2 sodas a day in my house, and I sometimes would have 6. You know, like I just never knew how to do just one. So
me neither.
because I was in gymnastics and judo and running and this and that and the other thing, and it was, like back when kids like ran around the neighborhood and, played with their friends outside. So I played hockey and, but one of the biggest things for me was that, I was a tomboy. And so I wore baggy clothes, and so I got called fat a lot, even though I wasn't fat. And so I did have like this bad image, and I was actually just sitting here remembering there was this one time I was working with this modeling agency, and the woman said I had a pooch in my stomach, and I was very thin at that time. And I remember thinking, I got to cut weight and eating like rice crackers, or what are the rice cakes.
Rice cakes. Yeah.
Eating like rice cakes as a little kid trying to cut weight, which is
with little bits of jam on it.
No, I didn't do the jam because I had sugar. Like no. I was trying to cut weight at that time.
So that's the other part of this too, is with food addiction, there's either like, I don't care about my body, it doesn't matter, or I do care about my body, and so I'm going to feel shame about it, but I'm going to do the thing, I'm going to eat the food, and then I'm going to feel really bad, especially if I go to a store and I have to try clothes on in the ugly mirrors. I'm going to have a shame hit, and then I'm going to want to go eat. Like there's so many like twisted thinking between body image and food. Food addiction, full food eating, obsessive compulsivity around it. So for body image, my mom was an ex-model, and she used to, before she married my dad, she had me, she gained a lot of weight. She had my sister, she gained more weight. She had my brother, she gained a lot of weight. And she believed it was because of all that. But it wasn't because of all that, And so, but my mom was super athletic before she had us, right? Anyway, that's enough about her. So what happened, though, is that she would always go, who do you think you are? When I would look in the mirror, she would like, were you really going to wear that? Very like shaming energy. But when I would go also to like eat something, she would, do you really need to eat that? And my mom was in recovery on and off too for food addiction. So I was exposed to recovery for food addiction as a child, and I had all the self-help books in the house as a little kid around food.
Yeah.
I don't know how I made it through that childhood, because just that little headspace is enough to make a person cray for a while, right? Never mind all the other stuff, So what were your kinds of thinking around body image and stuff like that?
Yeah. I was always top heavy. Right, which usually kind of played to my benefit, I felt like, but as I got older...
How? I don't understand.
I know, right?
What is that? How does that work?
As I got older, though, once I really started to gain weight, probably, like, I remember at, like, 26, I had gotten a boyfriend, and I was, like, 205 at that point, and I thought, like, this was an okay space. And then 7 years of a relationship, you get comfortable. At least I got super comfortable with food, and I gained a lot. And I did lose some on my own. I got myself back down to 205 in 2015, and it was just because like I moved out here, and like this is a very pretty city to some degree, right? A lot of people are really invested in how they look, and so like I felt this urge that like I was doing enough cocaine, I should have stayed thin, but it wasn't working out.
Isn't that weird? You either are like
so
rail
there's
thin
this misconception that cocaine's a miracle drug for that, because it wasn't working for me. Yeah. So, but I think it's interesting we talk about with pregnancy, because it is at least in my opinion, it's such an excuse.
Oh, such an excuse.
Because when I got pregnant, I was about 250. And, you know, I'm like, oh, here we go. I can just eat whatever I want. I don't have to worry about
You're eating for two.
But then I found out I had gestational diabetes.
Yeah.
Pregnancy diabetes. They put me on a super strict diet, and I had to check my blood, and I had to do the insulin. I had to go see a nutritionist every single week. And I only gained 11 pounds that whole pregnancy. My son was 7.5. So if you do the right things, you can still eat for two, right? It just kind of becomes this, like, really convenient
Thank you for sharing that.
I feel like that's a big thing, though, because you can still eat for two. I still ate like a runner when I stopped running.
Good point.
And so I couldn't eat the amount of calories I had been eating, you know, because I wasn't running anymore. But I was doing ephedrine, so you know there was something else. But then when that left, you know, so like the way that our addiction works, like we think, oh well, this is what I've been doing, so this is okay now, you know.
Yeah, my drugs of choice were always the things that took me down, not the things that took me up. And they usually were the things that made me eat. Like pot.
Like pot, yeah.
So stupid. Like pot was constantly making me want sex and food. And if I had more sex, I probably would have been thinner. But you get very lazy when you smoke a lot of pot, especially the way I used to smoke pot. And so it was basically food is what was happening.
But at least when we were doing pot, there weren't edibles like there are now. So we weren't just eating gummy bears all day long.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Okay. So that's a whole different topic. Yeah. But okay. So So one of the things is that culturally we do have either, you know, you don't want to be so extreme that you're starving yourself. But sometimes the addictions that we have are partly to keep our bodies a certain way.
Yeah.
Like I smoked cigarettes. I swore I wasn't going to smoke cigarettes. You know, my dad smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and I was so sure I was not going to smoke. But when I came off of drugs, you know, I went and I started smoking cigarettes, and just to help me sleep. It was stupid, but I noticed that it curbed my appetite, right? And so when I ended up having to quit smoking in early recovery, I knew that I was going to get back into food. I used to be bulimic, right? But I hadn't been bulimic for a long time, and I was kind of thinking, oh, you know, maybe I'm good, you know? I think I'm probably going to get a little bit into the food, but that's okay because I really want to stop smoking, and I'll deal with the food after. And guys, they say when you pick up an addiction back up again, that it takes it starts as if it never stopped, right? And so within a week, I was throwing up my food, back to full binging, purging, purging all over again. Yeah. And that was like, holy cow. So I ended up needing to get help for bulimia. And then I got that, and I stopped being bulimic for a long time. But there are parts of my recovery where bulimic episodes would come back, and if it wasn't the actual, you know, eating and then oops, I ate too much and then wanting to throw it up, I would also have the bulimic thinking, you know, like I'm eating, I don't want to have too much, I'm going to have to work out, and you know, like not like eating for health, you know, it's still that programming of needing to look beautiful, and also being able to eat. You know, eat your cake and eat it too. Have your cake and eat it too. Have your cake and eat it too. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. So yeah. So I really do feel that it's not just things like, you know, being pregnant or being sick or you know, going through grieving or depression or whatever, but like I feel like, you know, having events, you know, all the things that we say that justify big huge eating, going to all or nothing restaurants, you know,
all you can eat,
yeah. They say all or nothing,
all
you can eat restaurants.
Same concept.
Because sushi was my
it's the same concept.
Sushi. I've loved sushi since I was 8 years old, and when they started having these all you can eat restaurants out here, like I mean, because I've lived here my whole life, so like when they started having these all you can eat restaurants and people would get together and like. It was like, who can eat the most? You know, like,
right.
Like it was like a competition all of a sudden.
Right, and then, and so you get sick. Thanksgiving dinner, I used to say those were amateurs. You know,
Yeah.
people are going to be so sick and so drugged from just eating copious amounts of food. And then I'm like, oh, amateurs, you know, because they don't know, you know.
Right.
But body inclusivity. If you don't know what that is, body inclusivity is the movement where no matter what your body looks like, we should not be, and it's been very strong in helping us deprogram the Barbie doll and the airbrushed, photoshopped model kind of mentality that we have as women and sometimes men have compared ourselves to, you know, about what we think we're supposed to look like to be beautiful. Like, this is beautiful. And so while I do feel like there's such a very strong positive emphasis on questioning the thinking that we've really grown up with, you know, by having these dolls that all looked like one body that we never looked like.
Right.
Yeah, I look more like the Cabbage Patch doll than the Barbie.
Yeah, but also, there's a negative side to it, and it's the side that people are so scared to talk about, and it's what I mentioned earlier, and that is that people are saying, you know what, love your body no matter how big you are, just love it, and expect other people to love it too, and that's self-love. And it's a controversial topic because I have found that while I do want to love myself, it's kind of like bloom where you're planted. Do not shame yourself about where you are, wherever your body is, wherever your health is, whatever's going on, but do something about it. Because if you are just loving yourself where you're at and justifying and rationalizing it and keeping yourself where you're at, I promise you're not going to stay where you're at. You're going to start having more and more consequences, and it's going to have to get to a place where either you do something about it or you don't. My dad was diabetic. My dad ended up having a form of cancer, and his body wasn't able to fight it as hard, but he ended up getting through that, and continued to smoke 3 packs of cigarettes a day, and and drank lots of alcohol, and the food addiction and the diabetes that stayed with him until he died. And I promise you, he did not have the digestive issues and all the stuff that he went through. That wasn't the life that you want for somebody if you love them.
Right.
Right? And so if you love somebody and you want them to have the healthiest, best life and be the best version of themselves, you want them to take care of themselves. You want them to eat healthy. You want them to not, do drugs and everything and really hurt their system. But why don't we want that enough for ourselves? Why are we not really just saying, you know what, this conversation might piss me off and it might make me feel bad, but maybe I need to just be with it and say, I do love myself, and I love myself where I'm at with all the things that I still have to heal, where my body is, etc. But I'm in progress, and I love myself enough to want to keep finding a healthier solution.
Agreed.
Okay, so when we come back from the break, we are going to talk about the actual surgery that Shenelle did, and all the process of before getting into it, doing it, what she had to learn, what she had to change, etc. And it's going to be a really interesting conversation. So we're going to go on a break now, but please remember that the opinions expressed here are strictly those of the people who gave them. Strictly those. They're just our opinions, and do not represent any 12-step program or should replace your own intuition or professional medical advice. See you in a bit. Welcome back to The Real Recovery Show. You can watch us on Facebook, YouTube, and on Amazon Fire TV. You can listen to us on the PHLV radio app or get our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or iHeartRadio. And you can also go to themeetingspace.com and you can click on The Real Recovery Show, where you'll see all the episodes that we've had thus far. And every Friday at noon, while we're still pre-recording, you'll be able to see them there as well. But we're going to go live at some point on Fridays, and so you can just go to the meetingspace.com and see our live broadcast there as well. But we'll keep you posted on that. And also, if you have an idea for a show, or if you would like to be on an upcoming episode, definitely click on the intake form and fill it out, or contact us through the contact form. We would love to hear from you. All right. Well, so before the break, we talked about the headspace around the thinking and the programming around food addiction and body issues, and how our society perpetuates food addiction and body issues. and so now we're back, and now we're going to talk about gastric sleeve surgery. And so, interestingly enough, Tay was going to look into having it at one point.
It was
earlier this year. But by that point, she had changed a lot of her thinking around it, and she also got denied because of where her BMI was, correct?
Right. It was my BMI, and they said that I didn't eat addictively
anymore.
Yeah. So it wasn't. It wouldn't have helped me like in the way that it helped.
Maybe previously, because you're 15 years sober now, and a lot has changed around your attitude towards food.
Right.
But also, so when you went to Shenelle, when you went to have the conversation about gastric sleeve surgery, you were under a year sober, right? And when you stopped doing alcohol and drugs, did you gain weight?
Yeah, I initially got into the gym. And I got a trainer, and I was like, I'm not gonna just transfer right over to food. I'm gonna do this thing. And I did not like doing the gym. Going to the gym. For me, it was a lot of work. Now I work out every single day, but back then it was just a feat to get there. And that wasn't really the problem. The problem was still the food, right? Because I could work out every day, but I would go home.
So did you feel like you gained weight? A lot of people gain weight.
I did
when they first get sober.
Definitely did, and I could feel it. I wasn't tracking it. I wasn't weighing myself or anything like that. I thought I was I just recognized I was slowly gaining. And I made an appointment for a regular physical. I was going to go in and ask for a medication called Contrav, which I had taken prior to my pregnancy, and it had worked, but then I got pregnant.
What does that do? Is it appetite suppressant?
Yeah, basically. It's, I can't think of the proper, medical word for what it was, that Contrav is, but yeah.
That's why it's called Contrav.
It's so simple.
Some people remember
it. And, it was a doctor I'd never seen before. And she just said to me, I can write you a prescription for it, but your insurance is going to make you pay for it. And it's kind of expensive. And she handed me a sheet of paper, and she said, call this number. And it just said at the top, Las Vegas Surgical Weight Loss Control Center. And I was offended because I was comfortable in my skin. I was like, wait a minute. I don't need that. You know?
That's a lot.
Yeah. And she was like, it's not instant. You're going to have to sit through some classes. So why don't you just go do the classes, and here's the Contrav prescription, and maybe the two together will work for you. And your insurance still makes the ultimate decision. And I was like, okay, fair enough. That makes sense.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So the classes were nutrition classes?
Yeah. So I called, and they made my appointment, and they had me come in. And, I get into this room that's where all the chairs are two-seaters, you occasionally see those at the airport.
Yeah.
And it was all that, and I was just kind of looking
around. That's
around.
interesting. You don't think that.
Yeah. And I'm like, do I belong here? Because I think I was around 270-ish, but for me, and the sort of confidence I've always had in my life, I just thought, I don't know if this is really where I belong, and I saw some people who I was like, oh, they definitely belong here, but that's sort of how I kind of felt about meeting other people who were in recovery. I wasn't always sure if I needed to be in recovery yet either.
Right, focus on the similarities.
Yeah, so the classes were super elementary. They were not about the surgery, the first few of them. And that's what I wanted to know about. I wanted to know the nuts and bolts. I didn't want to know how many ounces of protein I needed to be having and, you know, what my plate needed to look like and all of these sorts of things, you know. I felt like I knew all of that already. But then I listened to some of the other questions. I remember a fellow asking our nutritionist how many cans of beans he could have to equal the amount of protein he needed to get from chicken. And I was like, who can eat that many beans?
Right.
So, you know, there's obviously something to be learned for everybody in there, you know, and I also learned how many cans of beans that would require, so I don't have that knowledge, but yeah, so we did that for 4 months, and then finally we had to have a one-on-one with the nutritionist over there, who's a fabulous, awesome lady, and she kind of went through like how what got you here, you know? But it wasn't so much focused on food addiction, you know? And I was real quick to say, like, I'm a recovering alcoholic, you know? Like, I've got some problems, you know? And this is obviously one of them. And
That's so cute.
so she was super kind about it. But I feel like most people had not come into that room telling her those things, you know?
Right.
And we talked about what food was going to look like after the surgery. And that was what I was interested in knowing, because I wanted to know what was going to happen if I made this commitment, you know. And
was it everything? Was it what you thought it was going to be? Or?
Yeah. I mean, you just find out little things, you know, like you can't have carbonation again, you know, you're not supposed to drink for 6 months afterwards. You can't chug water.
You mean alcohol? Oh, any water?
Yeah, alcohol.
Anything?
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
I thought you were on a liquid.
Right. No, you can't chug.
Oh, chug.
You physically can't chug.
You have
like,
to
you will
sip
get
it.
sick.
Gotcha.
Yeah, like she was like, you need to practice sipping water to get the amount of water in every day. You got to start doing that now. You know? Yeah, and
I drink
that's
so
still
much
a tough
water.
one.
That'd be crazy.
It's a tough
Well, you
one
would
to
just
me
have to
today.
do it through a straw.
Yeah.
Okay, and then so when you started getting interested in this surgery, what about you qualified you for the surgery?
So my BMI got me there. So that was
What
the
was
fast
it?
track. It was like 44, 45 or something. I don't know off the top of my head. I just knew it had to be above 40.
Okay.
And they were real quick to be like, if you drop, though, just go get a sleep study. Because almost everyone who's overweight has some sort of
Sleep apnea.
and that'll get you right there. And I was like, okay, cool. I was like, don't want to do that. I didn't want to even think about having to come home and put that thing on my face,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
Right.
So I just, I qualified by my BMI, but, otherwise if you're 35 BMI and you are diabetic, not pre-diabetic, but diabetic and medicated, high blood pressure and medicated, the sleep apnea, anything that's related directly to your weight.
Where the insurance, because it's all about insurance.
Yes. I could have gone to Mexico and been like, here's
Right.
$7,000
Right.
today.
What's making why they're qualifying you is because the insurance is giving you this. It's not because
it's got to be medically necessary for the insurance to pay for it.
Exactly.
And
Right.
then
so it's not that you can't get the surgery.
Exactly. Right. I know people who had a very low BMI and have been like 200 pounds and gone to Mexico to have it done. I have thoughts on that
Did you, speaking of that too,
Yeah.
because a lot of times, people would think, oh, I could just go ahead and do that, but to keep this behavior, when you change it, when you're going to these classes and everything like that,
Yeah.
was there anybody there that wasn't really wanting to change their thinking?
100%. And so the very last appointment we did before the surgery, which was those of us who were getting surgery the following week, that's when I met people who got to skip to the head of the line.
Okay.
Who were either paying for this out of pocket or their insurance company did not require those classes.
Oh, wow.
It didn't require the classes.
Yeah, so my
Wow.
insurance did. And I had to sit down with a psychologist to get the final approval.
Wow.
And he informed me that the people he sees that don't do the classes had a much higher failure rate than those who had to put in all this work, right? Because if I just want to go get something fixed, like liposuction, I just pay a surgeon and I can have surgery next week, right? But so that you can still do that with bariatric surgery if you go to Mexico or you've got a lot of money and you want to get it done where I had it done,
Right.
So that's when I got introduced to people who got to skip to the head of the line, and 100% they were not ready. Even though I can't have alcohol for 6 months. Like, that was like flabbergasting to them,
Right.
And
but you being already so
Right.
yeah, it wasn't even
whatever.
concerned. Or being liquids only and not being able to have coffee. Like, that was a big complaint too. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do that. And there was one particular woman who I met initially there, who I later ended up sharing the pre-op room with, but she had a lot of money. She was there with her assistant. And I will just never forget.
But they were both getting it done?
No, the assistant might as well have gotten it done. Because she was taking all the notes and doing all the work, writing down the grocery list items that they needed and all these things. This lady was having a fit about every little thing, like every little concept of what this looked like. And then she always stuck in my head. And then I end up being in the room with her the morning of surgery. She was going before me. There were 7 of us that day. And I was last, and she was before me. And man, we were in there for like 3 hours. And there was a curtain between us because of COVID. And so we're just like talking. And I knew it was hers. I recognized her voice. And she had had a food funeral the whole weekend. It was telling me about all the restaurants she went to. And I had that point, I had committed to doing 2 weeks of liquid, even though I didn't have to do it. Some people are required to do it, and it's the logic is that they want to shrink the liver up. Because when they go in there, they're moving the liver temporarily. So if they can have a smaller liver to move, the better it is for you, right?
Right.
But I did the diet because I wanted to prove to myself I did it.
Right.
I had a normal obese person's tummy, and I went only on liquids through my birthday, and I was totally okay. And that was a big thing to prove to myself.
That is so powerful.
Yeah, and I mean, when I asked them
if you go and you binge and you eat all the bad stuff, and also I can't imagine if we eat that amount of food and then we have the surgery, that's going to be so much more suffering.
Yes.
Because the mind isn't even prepared to handle not having the food.
Right. And so it was tough. And it was I had a birthday over that period. And I was like, no food celebration. We're going go-karting or something. Right. And I'm barely squeezing into that go-kart, being like, God, next year this will be a different
How cool is that? Seeing everything as a motivation.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So, so I had done 2 weeks of liquids, and I had prepped, and I had the protein shakes at home, and I had they had told us that what we think we like today isn't going to be what we like when we wake up from surgery, so have a mix of everything. And I had everything prepped, kind of a smorgasbord of things at home. I had a support system in play. I had other sober people out in the waiting room. I knew that when I woke up, I knew that I was going to be in a lot of pressure pain from the gas that they put in during the surgery, and the only way it goes away is to walk. So I had my friends there ready to get me out of bed and get me going. So I had a whole plan, right? And this lady next to me was in a different universe, and bless her heart.
Not any kind of recovery mindset for her.
Nothing, and she kept calling her assistant, making, because I had mentioned what kind of protein shake I got. She didn't get that one, so she's got to make the phone call, make sure you have that for me, you know?
Right.
All of these things. And then, she got wheeled up, and then finally it was my turn, and I was nervous because I had not been put under before in my life.
Oh, really?
So that was a super nerve-wracking thing to me because I'm a control freak, right? I'm an alcoholic.
Right.
So, to me, being awake for my C-section made sense. Of course, I should be awake for the surgery, right? I should be flying and sitting next to a pilot on any airplane I'm on. So the idea that I'm not going to be awake while you remove 80% of an organ.
Right.
What?
Right.
And they were wheeling me in, and they had some really awesome music playing, AJR or something, and I was like, okay, I can handle this. And he asked me a question what do I do for work, and I was like, I work in marketing, and he's like, oh, that's so cool, you'll have to tell me about it later. Sucked into the middle of earth. That's the best way to describe it. And then all of a sudden you're spit back out, right? And when I woke up, I was in a lot of pain, as I predicted. And finally, when I got wheeled up to my room, and my friends got me up and walking, I just wanted to get moving because I was in so much pain, right? And I walked past her room, who had before me, still had not moved, not out of the bed yet. Still
Which she's supposed to be walking.
Yeah, we're all supposed to be up and walking right away. The stomach, or the surgery itself is 5 incisions, very tiny. I think 2 are a camera, 1 moves the liver, and the other 2 are scissors. And they're very tiny. You can't even see them on me. And they do a 96-hour nerve blocker in there. So you don't really feel any actual, incision pain.
You
my
to start
C-section.
Moving when you're not feeling pain.
Yeah. And when I got up to the room, the TV was on, and I remember seeing a Jack in the Box commercial, and I was mortified. My brain was oh, what is that? I was watching something grotesque, I was just grossed out, and that was when I realized that this was a real thing just seriously happened here.
It's very spiritual, this whole process of trusting, having the courage to do the surgery, doing everything in your power to make sure that you're doing the right thing, getting your headspace right, having the support system of people in recovery, having
she did it smart.
She did it, like she did it. She did the surgery, and this is why it was so important to have her on the show, right? Because to get the surgery, like if I had the other woman on the show, I would have had I did this and this sucked about it and that sucked and this was hard and blah, 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 blah. And it didn't really entirely work because I'm having this problem now and that problem and we all know that person, right? We could all be that person, right?
We could.
But when you are conscious and you're saying, okay, you know what? Just to make sure that my head is really in this game, I'm going to be doing everything I can to give myself the best chance, and I'm going to go liquid for 2 weeks, and I'm going to do it partly to make it easier, but partly because I want to make sure that I know that I'm not gonna binge and treat my body like a garbage can, because I want to heal. I want to have a better life, and I've known this from changing my diet drastically and becoming healthier and healthier. Your taste buds change. So when they say you're going to want different foods, you're going to want different foods. We're so conditioned into you ever notice that a lot of the candy is fruit flavored?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. But people aren't eating fruit, right?
I've only ever liked fruit flavored candy.
But then you get to a place where you start actually having the cravings for healthier and healthier things, and you're like, who am I? Yeah. And now, like, the things I used to crave, oh my God, like I don't even see it as food anymore, which is phenomenal, because I was binger. Yeah. Like the donuts and the pizza and the everything. So, okay, this is awesome. And
I think that there's something really cool to be said about someone who doesn't do the food funeral before the surgery. Right. Because it's not like you're doing the surgery to fix a problem. You're using another tool to recover. And if your mindset has already changed in the I'm not going to eat this way anymore, like that's a big step to like, I can still eat this way for another week, but I'm not going to because my heart is already in the recovery.
Right. Do you know what else that just occurred to me is that, let's say you have an anorexic mindset, right? So like you go, and then now you're like, okay, you know what? Now that I had the surgery, I can't eat this, I can't eat this, I can't eat this. I want to lose weight the fastest. You could end up swinging past normal and going to the other extreme and just being like, now I'm not going to eat. And they teach you, right, on how to make sure you get enough calories in.
We have to, so I track all of my food, and, I'm vocal about my recovery from alcohol, and I'm also vocal about this, right? And I
know, seeing your posts on Facebook.
I post every day what my calories, and sometimes I tattle on myself, because I'm not perfect, right?
No, yeah, of course.
But I track everything, and, where I'm at today, and I'm about 6 months and 3 weeks out, I'm consuming between 800 and 1,000 calories a day, which doesn't seem like a lot.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'4".
Okay.
Yeah. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but when I look at what I'm eating, I'm focusing on protein.
But you're also focusing on quality.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I'm looking at how am I going to hit the protein today with the little tiny tummy I have, and making sure that all these foods are benefiting me throughout the day. So, it's protein. Everything is protein for me. I, have protein bars, protein shakes. I only eat just meat. It works. It works for me, and
absolutely.
I try not to. Well, I made a list of foods I wasn't gonna ever eat again before the surgery. That was this is not. Have not had fast food since the surgery, and that was a huge one for me. And I, at this point,
fast food is really addictive.
It is.
And even what's put into fast food is for the purpose of making you want more. So, so we have maybe another 7 minutes left, maybe. I've lost track. So I'm curious though, throughout the process now of being post-surgery, did you start to want to do more exercise again?
They told us, so the pre-op surgery we had 2 weeks before, which was this guy, Mark, who's a physician's assistant down there, and he was just amazing. He was that tough, drill sergeant person that I needed to hear, and probably was offensive to some people in there, but I needed to hear
sometimes
that.
you need somebody to tell you the truth.
He was like, if you're not up and moving, like, you know, if you're not up and moving and doing this and making the changes, like, you know, you're going to gain it all back.
Yeah.
And I've met people who've gained it back.
God, wouldn't that suck?
And I
to go through that whole surgery.
Time. I've asked I just got wisdom tooth removed the other day, and the assistant, you know, afterwards had mentioned something, and I said, it's not a big deal. I've had gastric sleeves. I barely eat anyways. She was telling me I couldn't eat for a few hours, and she goes, I had it. And she goes, look at me now. And she was obviously heavier, and I was like, where did it go wrong? And she said to me, well, my surgeon, you know, already, my surgeon didn't tell me that I could stretch it back out. And I was like,
oh,
he
God.
had to have. Like,
yes.
You know, I don't understand how you
I don't think you heard it.
Yeah.
Or even still, like, you know, the victim mentality of wanting to have the quick fix to, like, censor and filter everything you don't want to hear that somebody's saying. But if you really have, even if your surgeon didn't tell you something.
Right.
Let's just say, sure, your surgeon didn't tell you a thing, the assistant didn't tell you a thing, the pamphlet that they give you doesn't say the thing, whatever. There's the internet.
Yeah, exactly.
And so, like, if you're not having the results that you're expecting,
right,
and you're just blaming it on somebody else, you know, like when we're having problems like that, we always have to look at our own self.
There's also an accountability piece of like that. I
taking responsibility.
Feel like you've taken on.
You know,
absolutely. That you have all these people that are like, so how are you doing today? You know,
that's so important to even in recovery. We have to move from a blaming other people, resentments kind of mentality, or even a fear of other people mentality, to taking personal responsibility for our part in things and for our thinking. So before you had the surgery, or before you even prepped for the surgery, how much did you weigh?
Like my highest weight of all time was 287. 287. 2 weeks before surgery, 267. Surgery day, 254.
Because you did the drink.
So I lost like 13, 14, 15 pounds or something in that window.
Which put you, like, were you still okay?
I was just on that cutoff for the BMI that morning. And this morning, 174. And that was in 6 months. Wow. And, you know, something super interesting that I was said to me the other day was that, did you know that the average person lives 940 months? That's the average person. And they were like, look what you did in 6 of those.
Oh, I just the chills. Right? That's awesome.
And it's like sometimes we focus so much on the big picture that we forget to look at the tiny little granular photos that make up our day-to-day. Yeah. You know, and in September, I moved into this new place, and it has a gym there. And I was like, okay, I want to start working out. So I go with a friend to the gym, and he's like, we're going to get on the treadmill. And I was like, oh, no, we are not. I've never been on the treadmill. I don't belong on the treadmill, right? And he was like, just run for a few minutes.
Maybe heavier you wouldn't have been comfortable.
Yes, right, because she's still up here. She hasn't left the building yet.
Right.
And so I got on the treadmill, and what do you know? I ran for 3 straight minutes, and it was a long 3 straight minutes. But then I thought, maybe this is an attainable, fun little goal, you know, and I post about it a lot on my social media. And just, you know, that was the first week of September, and now here at the end of October, and I just got a whole mile under 12 minutes.
Wow,
you know?
That's awesome.
And it's just from, like, doing it.
That's the mindset. Yeah. That's the recovery mindset. The recovery mindset takes things, uses them as tools, changes our perception about the food and the body.
Yeah.
So it's the only way that we're going to have a different experience is if we change everything.
Right.
So you mentioned about how, you know, getting on a treadmill up here in your mind is still Shenelle that weighs 267 pounds, right? And so 267 pounds Shenelle says, I'm not getting on that treadmill.
Yeah.
But the body version of Shenelle that's 175 pounds or whatever is saying, maybe I could. Right? And so, because when I was really heavy, like, I felt like everything was arduous, and I couldn't, but as I lost weight, it did get easier for me to move my body.
It does. And you sit differently, and you do everything differently. And to me, that's so fun, right? Like when I got sober, trying things that I used to only do with drinking, and now doing them sober, having New Year's Eve sober, right? My birthday sober, watching a football game sober. There's all these new firsts, and they are exciting. At least they were to me.
Yes.
And now I'm kind of doing that same thing with weight loss. And
so how has your story about your body changed?
Yeah, so I I know that I look different. And like we talked about earlier, for, you know, I've always dressed the same. I've always been a little loud, per se. And that's been me my entire life. Like, you'll never see me in a pair of jeans.
Right.
I'm always dressed up. It's just how I've always been. But now, like, yeah, the attention has changed, right? And that it does. We don't talk about this in those nutrition classes. We're not talking about how the world's going to treat you differently. And it is a kind of a crappy reality.
Yeah.
You know, there's like this term called like the skinny clause, right? Where people just treat you differently because of the way you look, and people are nicer to me. People I have known for some time.
But you know something? It's funny because you've always been more confident, but a lot of times people's confidence does go up, and then people treat them differently, and they think it's because of the outside, but it's actually also because they feel more confident. So is it possible that you also have more confidence than you had before?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. Part of me is just like, I'm the same person.
I see you as the same person. I have to say, as I've seen you before you had the surgery, I've seen you. And it's interesting because you're an exception. Like I feel like a lot of people don't necessarily have the, you know, that I'm here.
Yeah.
This is me, and this is how I am. This is how I dress. This is how I talk, and that's just it. You know.
Yeah,
I beat to my own drum too, so
Right.
like I totally recognize that. But you know, a lot of times, you know, when we are heavier, it's a false sense of security.
I would say so.
Yeah.
I mean, like, and you and I had talked about this offline, like, that I notice whenever I lose 25, 30 pounds, I get attention that I don't necessarily want. And it's hard to, like, not hide behind this is who I am and this is what I look like.
But then that's just an invitation, and it was for me too, to go, okay, I acknowledge that I gain weight to protect myself because of rapes and stuff like that. So then that's... Obviously, then I'm eating for another reason, right? To hide behind fat, to feel safe. And so the real issue then is I need to really keep working on healing from the rapes and stuff like that. So I had this one experience where I lost like, I don't know, 50 pounds, I think it was. And I went to an event, and this guy, it was this huge recovery event, and this guy leans to me, and he like right next to me, and he goes, if all the girls hate you and all the guys want you, you're doing your job. And then the whole event started. And it was like, and I literally did not hear a word anybody said or anything, because I was so like self-conscious. And if anybody looked at me, right? But I was also having like a weird look on my face. I'm sure I attracted that too. I promise you that I couldn't eat fast enough. And I knew this was happening, and I ended up gaining the weight back and then some, because my mind still believed that my sense of security was in hiding behind fat. I also believed that, you know, that if I look sexy and fabulous, that I'm more susceptible to getting, or at risk of getting raped, right? Which I had to do work on that. I had to find out that, no, actually rape is more of a control power thing. And it's usually somebody who's like acting out on their own sickness. And it really has nothing to do, if anything, I'm more catchable if I can't be out, you know, I can't outrun them. But I had to like really look at that, you know, and my mentality of why I got raped, you know, that I had that I wanted attention, or I wanted somebody. I didn't have an ability to take care of myself while I was still able to do it, and so I kept myself in situations where I was more likely to get raped. And so it's not a blame the victim kind of thing. It's more of a responsibility, empowerment. You know, what can I do so that I don't have to use fat for a false sense of security, because it's not the security. It's not the security. And I had to heal. You know, how do I know that anybody really loves me? Because they don't necessarily love me as much when I'm heavy, and then when I lose weight. So we do, right? Don't we have all this conditioning? So now you've lost weight, and it's like the world's changing quickly.
It is, and for me, like, you know, I always knew when I was heavier, such as a child, like, I'm naturally a redhead. I am goofy looking. My grandma gave me short hair in high school. I think it was like a form of birth control. I was a goofy looking kid. And I had to learn really quickly that if I was going to be taken serious in the room, I had to be confident, right? I had to stick out in other ways. I've been a business owner for most of my adulthood. I've been, you know, kind of this, like, responsible drunk. And, you know, I had to show authority in other ways because my looks weren't going to get me there, you know? And so maybe to some degrees, that's how I've always been so bold.
I've had that too,
You
though.
know?
I've had it's like a self-protective mechanism, like literally, like, just try to mess with me, you know, like, but it was a guard that was up.
Yes.
And how old are you now? I don't know if
I'm
I asked you
38.
earlier. You're 38, because you look a lot younger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, though, that one of the cool things for me has been, since I've been in this relationship, that I want to be healthier. You know, like, and it's the first time that, like, I feel like
You had the right motivation to want to look at the food
and
stuff.
it's not like I need to be a model. You know, I'm
for
30,
your partner to love you.
right, because she's the most amazing human ever.
She's pretty good. Yeah.
But I mean, I'm 39. I'm going to be 40 really soon, and I do feel this like urge to get healthy enough to like live a long life because love is worth it, you know? And so like I
think also though that you've started to like really get to a place where you understand the cause and effect of this is what I eat, and this is how I'm treating myself, and this is the health stuff that I've had, and this is what I've been doing, and getting to a place where you want to level up, and you've healed from a tremendous amount of trauma, and that allows you to also not hide behind it. And you know, it's not just for women; men also have these issues too.
Yeah,
I do know that this society is very much more programmed for the woman to look like, you know, whether or not we say that it's not true. The truth is that there is this skinny principle. Or what did you call it?
Skinny clause.
Skinny clause. You know, you can get away with certain things. But yeah, so it's an invitation, you know, like whatever you do, get surgery, don't get surgery. Go on a diet, don't go to a diet. Go to the gym, don't go to the gym. Do whatever, but do it because you're wanting to have a healthier life. You're wanting to really learn how to love yourself, and you're wanting it to be one tool in your toolbox for your own evolution of spiritual and physical awakening. So we're at the end of our hour, and I just want to thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah, it was great.
No problem.
Because you coming on here and sharing your experience, strength, and hope about this definitely helps people to see, you know, maybe themselves in it. And, you know, and even if the surgery is not something that you're considering doing, you know, it could also be that the topics that we talked about the mindset, about changing, maybe you saw some things that helped you to recognize your next step in your process too. So one step at a time. It's amazing the things that change, and then you turn around and you're like, wow, you know, thank God I took that little bit of time to make huge differences, because it adds up. All right, well, thank you for joining us today on The Real Recovery Show. We'd like to give a special thanks to our sponsor and gracious host, PHLV Radio, here in Las Vegas. See you next week.